We have an absolute bombshell dropping straight from the heart of London, and the palace walls are shaking. Prince William and the iron-willed Princess Anne have just joined forces to execute a stunning, tactical takedown of Queen Camilla. In a move that has left royal insiders utterly breathless, they have successfully pushed the Queen out of the monarchy's inner circle, stripped her of her quiet influence over the crown's future, and proved once and for all that King Charles's protection can no longer save her. This is not some petty argument about palace seating charts, royal titles, or who gets to stand where in front of the cameras. This is a cold-blooded, high-stakes battle for the ultimate control of the British monarchy. For months, a quiet drama has been brewing in the shadows. Camilla was slowly building her own secret empire. She was quietly planting her own loyalists in key spots, whispering orders to staff, and slowly building a shadow court behind the king's back. But she made one fatal error. She assumed no one was watching. Prince William was watching. He didn't scream. He didn't make a scene. Instead, he quietly began documenting every single overstep, every unauthorized meeting. When the final dossier of evidence landed on William's desk, the sheer scale of the power grab became impossible to ignore. Camilla wasn't just managing the current household, she was actively trying to rewrite the rules of William's future reign. Access to historic royal estates, major staff decisions, and even private arrangements tied directly to the sacred legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. Camilla's office had its hands in all of it. The official letters were written in polite, elegant language, but the goal was clear. Someone was trying to build a second throne before the rightful heir could even sit on it. William read through the final page in absolute silence. Standing right beside him was Princess Anne. She didn't need to say a single word. On the table before them lay a massive, heavy folder packed with hard evidence. Dates, leaked messages, altered calendars, and direct orders sent from Camilla's office that William had never approved. Anne had catalogued everything. Every time a loyal advisor was pushed out, and every time a Camilla supporter was pulled in, it was recorded. Camilla mistook Anne's quiet dignity for weakness. That was her very first mistake. Her second, and most devastating mistake, was believing that Prince William would choose to keep the peace with his father, rather than stand up and defend his own future crown. For a long time, William stayed quiet to protect his father from stress. He knew how easily royal drama turns into global public humiliation. But this wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. This was about whether the future King of England would actually be allowed to rule, or if a shadow network would control him from the shadows. Before we reveal the exact document that brought Camilla's quiet empire crashing down, let's make one thing very clear. If you stand with Prince William, Princess Catherine, and Princess Anne, hit that subscribe, like, and share button right now. Do not just watch this in silence. When you stay quiet, you let the other side control the narrative. Show your support for the future of the crown. And tell us right now in the comments, whose side are you on? Are you Team William and Anne, or Team Camilla? Write your choice below. Do not sit on the fence, because that exact same silence is what made Camilla believe she could never be stopped. The explosive showdown took place in a locked room at Buckingham Palace. Camilla walked in expecting a simple family chat, the kind of meeting where King Charles would step in and smooth things over before anyone got hurt. Instead, she walked into a trap. William and Anne were already seated at the table. Senior palace officials and top legal advisors were waiting in the corners of the room. The heavy folder of evidence was sitting right in the center of the table. For the first time in her royal life, Camilla was entering a room where being the king's wife did not guarantee her absolute control. Princess Anne didn't waste any time. She asked a single, sharp question. Why had Camilla's office tried to overrule a family decision connected directly to the late Queen Elizabeth? Camilla didn't apologize. In fact, she doubled down. She argued that the monarchy could not stay stuck in the past, and that as queen, she had every right to decide who held influence in the palace. She dismissed Anne's protests, calling them outdated ideas from someone who refused to accept where the real power now belonged. A heavy, freezing silence fell over the room. William had walked in prepared to negotiate, but that arrogant answer completely ended his patience. He looked Camilla dead in the eye and told her flatly that marrying the king did not give her a single ounce of authority over the future sovereign. Camilla tried to fight back, suggesting that Princess Anne was poisoning William's mind against her. But Anne didn't need to say anything. The documents spoke for themselves. Anne slowly slid a paper across the table. It was a secret proposal drafted by Camilla's office to strip William of his control over major royal operations and hand those duties to a committee run by Camilla's closest allies. The plan was designed to take effect quietly, behind the scenes, before William could even realize what was happening. That was the moment the argument turned into an existential threat. William stared at the paper, looked at Princess Anne, and immediately ordered an emergency family summit at Windsor Castle. Every single instruction, every staff appointment, and every private message linked to Camilla's office would face a full-scale audit. Camilla still believed King Charles would step in and rescue her. She had absolutely no idea that Anne possessed one more piece of paper, and it carried the one signature that Charles could never ignore. Months before this massive showdown, the warning signs were easy to ignore. A meeting was rescheduled without explanation. A loyal secretary was suddenly replaced. A residence calendar was quietly altered. Individually, these details looked like minor administrative errors. That is exactly why the plan worked so well. Camilla's office didn't launch a loud coup. They simply started acting like they already ran the place. Quiet orders were sent out. Staff were told that the Queen wanted specific people included in highly sensitive discussions, while other, more independent advisors were suddenly locked out of planning rooms for future ceremonies. At first, the staff thought it was just boring palace paperwork, but then William noticed a terrifying pattern. Two of his most trusted officials, who regularly updated him on royal estates, were suddenly banned from a key meeting. Another top advisor was told that because a discussion concerned the present reign, the Prince of Wales did not need to be involved. 1 change is an accident. 3 is a coordinated attack. William kept his composure. He didn't want to add to his father's immense burdens, and he knew a public fight would look like a petty family feud rather than a serious defense of the Constitution. So he stayed quiet and watched. But Princess Anne was active. She became a silent detective, writing down every single date, name, time, and order. She kept records of every revised schedule, and every single time Camilla's team used the king's name to push through an order that Charles himself had never actually given. Anne didn't complain. She didn't warn anyone. And that silence gave Camilla a false sense of absolute security. Soon, palace staff felt like they were serving 2 different masters, the official office of the king and the shadow court of the queen, where orders were framed as personal favors but carried heavy, unspoken threats. Employees were terrified of crossing the queen, fearing they would be quietly fired or blacklisted. The breakthrough came when a terrified senior employee approached Princess Anne at Windsor. He revealed that staff were receiving verbal commands with no official written paperwork, alongside chilling reminders that loyalty would be remembered. Anne asked him one simple question. Did Prince William approve this? The answer was a flat no. From that second, Anne's notes became an active internal investigation. She compared schedules across different households and found a systematic campaign. William's representatives were being systematically erased from key meetings and replaced by Camilla's personal favorites. She even found drafts referring to a new transition structure, a harmless-sounding phrase designed to hide a massive shift in power. Still, Anne waited. She knew that if she moved too early, Camilla would just blame it on over-eager assistants or scheduling mistakes. She needed the smoking gun. It arrived just 3 days before the public announcement. It involved a major family decision regarding the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II, a decision that had already been formally agreed upon by the senior royals. Yet, a new order suddenly appeared from Camilla's office, taking control away from the family and handing it to a committee she controlled. When Anne objected, Camilla arrogantly brushed her off, saying she wouldn't be stopped by outdated rules, and that Anne had no power to block the Queen. That was the final straw. Camilla didn't see Anne as a protector of the crown. She saw her as a nuisance to be swatted away. Anne looked at the message, laid it next to her months of evidence, and saw the entire battle plan. The staff changes, the locked doors, the secret meetings. It was all preparation to control the future of the monarchy. But Anne knew that a battle of this magnitude required more than just files of administrative oversteps. She needed to expose the financial trail. Over the next 48 hours, she quietly directed a trusted forensic auditor within the Duchy of Cornwall to cross-reference recent, unusual funding reallocations. What they discovered sent a chill straight down her spine. Substantial sums of money, originally earmarked for the upkeep of historic royal residences, had been quietly diverted under the guise of special security updates to fund private, off-the-grid renovations at a secluded estate favoured by Camilla's inner circle. It was a glaring, unauthorised redistribution of royal wealth, executed completely out of sight of the Treasury. At the exact same time, a highly confidential memo leaked from the palace's communications department, revealing that Camilla's team had been drafting an independent public relations strategy. This parallel PR campaign was designed to slowly elevate Camilla's public standing as the co-regent in the event of King Charles's prolonged medical leave, bypassing the constitutional role of the Prince of Wales entirely. The drafted press releases even went so far as to suggest that Prince William was fully supportive of this shared governance model, a complete and utter fabrication. It was a bold, public-facing coup designed to manipulate public opinion before William could even mount a defense. Armed with these explosive new revelations, Anne realized the rot went far deeper than a few ambitious aides trying to secure their jobs. This was an active, coordinated effort to strip the future king of his financial leverage and his public authority at the worst possible moment. The diverted funds and the unauthorized PR drafts were the final, undeniable pieces of the puzzle, proving that Camilla's office was preparing for a seamless transition of power to her own loyalists, effectively rendering the heir to the throne a spectator in his own kingdom. The gravity of the situation was now too massive to ignore, and the time for quiet observation had officially run out. Anne looked at the financial audits, the rogue PR drafts, and the mountain of correspondence, knowing she held the ultimate ammunition to dismantle this shadow court once and for all. With a steady hand, she picked up the secure line to Adelaide Cottage, preparing to deliver the evidence that would force Prince William to make the most difficult decision of his life. Before midnight, Anne called William. She told him Camilla had crossed the line, and the danger was far worse than they had ever imagined. By 8:15 the next morning, she was in William's office. By noon, the doors of the conference room were completely locked down. When Camilla walked in, expecting a minor disagreement, she froze when she saw the thick, heavy folder waiting for her. William didn't stand up. Anne didn't smile. The doors were shut and the trap snapped closed. Anne started with the Queen Elizabeth legacy decision, demanding to know who authorized the change. Camilla tried to talk her way out of it, claiming that circumstances had changed, and that as Queen, she had a duty to modernize the institution. But when Anne asked if King Charles had personally signed off on this, Camilla hesitated. She claimed she was acting in accordance with his wishes. Acting on wishes means you don't actually have a signature. You are just using your access to the king to force people to obey you. When Camilla tried to turn the blame back on Anne, accusing her of living in the past, Anne simply laid the two documents side by side on the table. One was the original, family-approved plan. The other was Camilla's edited version. The changes were glaring. William's team had been completely erased, and Camilla's committee had taken full control. William sat in absolute silence until Camilla dismissed Anne's objections as irrelevant. That was the moment the future king snapped. In a low, icy voice, William told Camilla that Princess Anne was not irrelevant, and that no office had the power to alter the responsibilities of the future sovereign. Camilla tried to play the victim, claiming she was only trying to protect Charles from pressure and stop rival households from fighting. "Rival households?" William repeated, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. He asked her directly if she viewed his office as an enemy of the king. Camilla tried to take the words back, but it was too late. The truth was out in the open. Remember, if you believe William and Catherine deserve to inherit a clean, uncompromised throne, subscribe, like, and share this video right now. We need to make sure the truth is heard before the palace PR machine tries to bury it. Faced with the evidence, Camilla accused Anne of compiling a fake conspiracy. But Anne simply opened the folder further, pulling out direct messages showing William's team being blocked from meetings, followed by urgent memos pushing for Camilla's personal favourites to take over key security and administrative roles. Then came the final blow, the draft proposal to manage the Prince of Wales until he was deemed ready to rule. William was being treated like a child to be supervised by Camilla's team. He read the words twice, his face hardening into granite. When he asked if she had approved this draft, her hesitation said everything. William closed the folder, stood up, and called for an emergency family meeting at Windsor Castle. Charles would be there, the lawyers would be there, and Camilla's shadow reign would be put on trial. The emergency meeting at Windsor Castle was tense, dark, and silent. King Charles arrived last, looking tired and worn down, taking his place at the head of the table. Camilla sat on his right, while William and Anne sat opposite them like prosecutors. The legal advisors laid out the timeline. They showed a highly coordinated map of Camilla's office, quietly lobbying for control over 4 critical pillars of the monarchy: staffing, estate management, ceremony committees, and the very flow of information reaching the Prince of Wales. Every single proposal was dressed up in polite language about protecting the king, but every single solution stripped power from William and gave it to Camilla's inner circle. Charles tried to defend his wife, suggesting it was just a misunderstanding or a case of poor judgment by overeager staff. But then Anne turned the page, showing the note where Camilla's office demanded William be kept away from certain decisions until he showed institutional readiness, with no definition of what that actually meant. Charles admitted he had never seen that language. A senior palace official then stood up and confirmed the worst. Camilla's team had been actively demanding access to William's private briefing papers, meaning she wanted to see what the future king was being told before he even had a chance to read it himself. That was the absolute breaking point. The room was no longer a family meeting, it was a court of law. The legal team handed their final recommendation to the king. It was brutal. It called for Camilla's immediate and total removal from all private family governance, succession planning, and any discussions regarding the future reign. Camilla pushed the paper away in disgust, her voice trembling as she called it an insult to her office and a deliberate attempt to humiliate her. She turned to Charles, begging him to stop this, reminding him of her years of loyalty and service. But Charles kept his eyes glued to the table. His silence was the loudest sound in the room. The legal advisor read out the terms of her containment. Camilla would be completely banned from meetings about succession. Her office could no longer issue orders to senior staff. Her closest aides would be reassigned, and she would have zero access to William's briefing papers. No order could carry the king's authority unless it came directly from the king's personal office. Camilla called it banishment. William called it containment. In a last-ditch effort to spark a fight, Camilla asked if Princess Catherine was behind this. William's face turned to stone. He warned her never to bring his wife's name into her personal battles, making it clear that this was an institutional decision, not a personal grudge. Anne then demanded the final devastating blow. The restrictions had to be signed and dated in writing. No verbal promises, no private handshakes. She wanted a legally binding document detailing exactly what powers Camilla no longer held. Camilla glared at Anne, accusing her of waiting decades for this revenge. Anne didn't blink. She simply replied, "Revenge requires someone else to create the punishment. You built this one all by yourself." Charles looked at the document. He asked if a temporary suspension would work, but the advisors shook their heads. It had to be permanent, lasting until the next king took the throne, meaning William would have the final say. Camilla looked completely abandoned. The husband she thought would protect her was being forced to choose between his wife and the survival of the crown itself. Charles picked up the pen. He hesitated for a long, agonizing second. Camilla whispered his name, one last plea for help. But Charles signed the paper. The quiet scratch of the pen ended months of hidden warfare. Within minutes, the palace systems were updated, access keys were revoked, and Camilla's shadow court was dismantled. As William stood up to leave, he announced that a public clarification would be issued immediately. Camilla protested, demanding the family keep their secrets behind closed doors. But Princess Anne got the final word. "We kept it inside for far too long. The gates of Buckingham Palace were about to open, and the secret war was finally coming into the light."